Mickey Mantle was my idol as a little boy growing up. And I've been fortunate, basically because of this TV show, etc., become friends with many very cool people. One of them is Danny Mantle. And just in passing, back in the middle of August, I sent him a text message. I said, Danny, how's everything going? Hope all is well. He says, Mike, a little bit of a heavy heart. Today is the 30th anniversary of Mickey Mantle's pass, of his dad's passing. I said, what? 30 years? He said, yeah. As a matter of fact, I just put something on our website, mickeymantle.com, if you want to read it. So it just hit me like a lightning bolt. I said, 30 years. I said, okay. So I go over to mickeymantle.com and I start reading. And Danny Mantle sent a very poignant message. He says, today marks the 30th anniversary of the passing of our beloved dad, Mickey Mantle. My brother and I feel incredibly grateful to honor his memory alongside family, friends, and his devoted fans. If he were here with us today, which we all wish, he would be proud beyond words of the unwavering support from those who continue to keep his spirit alive in their hearts. Thank you to all of Mickey's loyal fans for your enduring love and remembrance throughout the years. We love and miss him deeply. With love, your family, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. I read that. Boy, it hit me. I couldn't wait. I ran to make a comment on the column that he had written, and it just gave me this kind of great feeling and a connection. And then I start reading other people's comments, and it was just an outpouring. So without further ado, I want to welcome in Danny Mantle. Danny, thank you for joining us tonight on this special episode.
Well, thank you, Mike. And Bryan, thank you so much for being here. And it means so much to us, like we just can't believe it's been 30 years. And it's just a real honor to have you guys, doing this for us. So it's great.
We had Bryan Hoch on as a special guest a while back, and you were able to talk to him. And he mentioned that Mickey Mantle was his favorite Yankee of all time. And he also is the best baseball beat writer in the business. And he works for MLB.com. Okay. And he's in the locker room all the time. So I said to you, I said, Danny, let's bring what you did on the website. Let's bring it to life in terms of an episode that we could do something visual. And the thought is Bryan Hoch would be the perfect special guest because he's got a connection. Mickey Mantle was his favorite Yankee of all time. But look what Aaron Judge is doing. He is, in a sense, bringing your dad to life every night, on the Yes Network because of his accomplishments. And Bryan Hoch wrote this incredible book, and we interviewed him. 62, Aaron Judge, 62 home runs. But now, yesterday's game, 358 career home runs. So that puts him on the pantheon. You got Ruth, Mantle, Garrick DiMaggio, and he tied Yogi Berra. Then he's going for the Triple Crown. Then he's going for his third MVP. Without further ado, the perfect person to bring this together and make some connections. Bryan Hoch, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. And I quite an intro there. And yeah, you're right. Mickey is my favorite Yankee of all time. And I'll say two things here comparing him to Judge. One, Mickey did it from both sides of the plate. Judge is as great as he is. I've never seen him take one swing left-handed. So we don't know we don't know how that would look. I'm guessing it wouldn't be as good as Mickey's left-handed swing. And two, yeah, having tied Yogi, I think Yogi would probably send him a telegram or a call at some point and say, I always knew my record would stand until it was broken, something like that, like what he sent to Johnny Bench once upon a time. And you start counting off these names here in Yankee history, and the top 5 home run hitters in franchise history have been unchanged since the 1960s. And so new company in there, and I wonder how high Judge gets. Can he catch Mickey? Yeah, I guess that's within reach. I think he could get to 500. He should probably. But he's hurt by the fact he debuted so late and he went to college and he got a late start. And so I think 500 is probably reasonable at this point for Judge, but he's not going to catch Babe Ruth, put it that way. And I am curious to see how far he gets, and I think that him chasing Mickey later on in his career will be a very interesting storyline that we can all pursue here.
You
Oh,
know what, Danny, will ask you to weigh in on that, but he brings up such a great point because there was a graphic on Yes Network where it says that other than Babe Ruth, Judge did it the fastest to 358. Ruth did it in 1,098 games. Judge, 1120. Mickey Mantle, 1492. But here's the rub that Bryan was alluding to. Mickey, 1,492 games. He was only 29 years old when he hit 358 home run. Judge is 33 already. Danny, your thoughts?
I mean, to me, I know I expressed that Judge is my favorite player, and I mean the guy is incredible, and so there's no telling what he may do on any given night, you know. And so it's just a privilege to be able to watch him. And I've said several times, I wish my dad was here because he would love this type of player, you know, and the fact that, you know, we're talking again about him being so close to the Triple Crown, you know, because the last time, remember, it was the same thing. And, but that was the year he hit the 62 homers, and he was probably pressured out by that time, you know. And I mean, we all know that Judge is just a phenomenal player and such a joy to watch, you know, number one because of his size. I think my dad would be so thrilled to watch him play, you know. So, but that's it's just great. So
And Bryan, you're a perfect person to ask. What we all know the accomplishments and the accolades. We could sit here all night. 20-time All-Star, 7 World Series championships, 3 Triple Crowns. But let's circle back to the 7 World Series championships. 7. Bryan, does Aaron Judge need to win a championship, a World Series championship, to put himself on the pantheon of Yankee greatness?
Yes. But with the caveat, I think most Yankee fans believe Don Mattingly was a great Yankee, and he didn't get one. But I think that's a very small company. I think if you're going to talk about the Mount Rushmore of Yankee greatness, and to even be in that conversation, what is this franchise built upon? It's built upon championships and winning in October, and Judge still hasn't gotten there yet. And so we were talking to him in the clubhouse in Chicago, and he talked about Yogi, and somebody had asked him, you know, his favorite Yogiism, and you know, he said something about it ain't over till it's over. But then he said, and this stuck out. He said he was so much more than that. He's so much more than the catchphrases and all that. He was a great baseball player, a great American, and 10 World Series championships, 10 rings. Think about that. And so obviously you mentioned that Mickey had 7 and Yogi had 3 more there, but to have one ring on each finger of your hands, that's just crazy. And then to see here, and yes, I understand that it's different now, that the game is different, but Judge has to at least get one before we start elevating him into that elite group. I think a great regular season player, and I think part of the problem also is that the way last year's World Series went is that he finally got to that stage. And what do we all remember that World Series for? We remember it for dropping a fly ball. He's got to change that narrative. He does, because if he winds up in Cooperstown, and he would on this and this track record, and doesn't have a championship, we're all going to point back to, well, you remember in 2024 when he finally got there, he dropped the fly ball. That's going to be a stain on his record. It's not going to overshadow everything, but he's got to get rid of it.
That's a great point. And to further Bryan's point, his career postseason batting average is 205. He batted in the 180s in this last postseason. So it's not only that we say, hey, well, expecting you to put the team on your back, but to live up to the back of your trading card to some degree in the postseason. Danny, your dad's accomplishments with all of those rings, was that most value to him, or were there other intangibles or anything else in terms of his career in retrospect? He just seemed to be, everybody loved him because he bled pinstripes. He just wanted to win, and he wanted to win at all costs. And winning championships is the name of the game. Danny?
His first 14 years, they were in the series 12, which is amazing in itself, right? I mean, but back then there was only 8 teams on each side. So, there just wasn't the teams, but, so he was obviously proud of the World Series because, you've heard the stories of him crying and things like that. And especially after the Pittsburgh game, they thought because they had such a great team that year, they should have won that World Series. But he was so, I think going into the Hall of Fame with him and Whitey together, was probably his, as far as, those types of things with series and home run, Hall of Fame, it would have been the Hall of Fame. But, he was just so thrilled. But he was a type of person that, he played so hard and wanted to be the best every time. And, and it took him a while to get to where he was, the clutch guy. And, I would say after 54 is when he started, coming into fruition, where he was starting to have those years. And of course, the 56 year was just a phenomenal year for him. He won the Triple Crown and he won the MVP. And I think that helped him, kind of ease up, because he had had so much pressure on him being, they were trying to make him the next Ruth, Gehrig, and DiMaggio, and, I don't think many people can do that. So, but I think he started once he did, had that phenomenal year, it released a lot of his worry. And, he went from there on. And, and I look, you think of his final years, his 3 years, and I do know what he means, or what he meant by it being so hard for him, and I think because of those 3 years, it brought him below his 300 average. And, that was something that was very important to him. And so, but yeah, he, going into the Hall with Whitey was one of his huge accomplishments for him.
Well said, Danny. And you mentioned Whitey Ford, so I want to circle back to something about that later. I'm going to try not to forget about that, but I want to say, Danny and Bryan, we're going to bring in Billy Martin Jr. because he has a personal story that I asked him to share. Because when Billy Martin passed away, when he died, it was shocking and sudden. And when Billy Martin passed away, there was an outpouring of love. And the thing was that Billy Martin Jr. was a young man. And at the funeral mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral, there was an ex-president that supported Billy Martin Jr. when his knees buckled, during the ceremony. But it was someone else that was there to support and be there day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And Billy Martin Jr., please say hello to Bryan Hoch. And Danny, you know very well. And please share that story with us if you can.
Hey, Bryan, Danny, good to see you guys.
Everybody.
Yeah, the president that Mike was talking about, I lost it at Dad's funeral when it was time to get up and leave. And somebody grabbed me under my arm, stood me up and said, walk outside and look at how many people loved your father. And we walked outside and I couldn't even see the sidewalks. There were so many people with signs with a number 1 with a halo on it. And we love you, Billy. We miss you, Billy. And I look over and it was Richard Nixon that had walked me outside and I have to admit it actually meant a lot to me because he helped me catch my snap. But Danny's dead. You know, most people only know about the Mick as the amazing athlete that he was. He still has the fastest time to first base in baseball history. My father said he absolutely had more power than anyone that he ever played with or against. But what I want to tell the world is that man also had a big heart. And when I lost my father at 26 years old, I got a call from Danny or David or Mickey Jr. at least twice a month saying, hey, Dad wants to take you to dinner this week. And Mickey would tell me stories about my father, that stories I didn't even know. You know, he told me about my father getting screwed out of a hit in the 1953 World Series. The World Series my father was MVP of and won the Babe Ruth Award. It's no longer that. Don't get me started on this one. But it's now the Willie Mays Award. But Dad hit a ball on the left side of second base, on the Pee Wee Reese side of second base, where Hall of Fame shortstop Pee Wee Reese played and couldn't get to the ball. But Jackie Robinson ranged all the way from second base, completely laid out, and the ball hit off the very end of his glove, basically diving into left field. Mickey said everybody in the building knew it was a hit, but they think the official scorer was a racist and wanted to give Jackie an error. And kind of shows how racism hurts everybody, because it cost my father what would have been a record 13th hit in a 6-game series. But needless to say, that's one of the many stories that Mick told me. It meant so much to me because when my father died, I thought my dream of being an agent died with him. I thought I'd lose all my contacts. And Mickey Mantle was the first man to show me that that wasn't even close to the case.
Bryan, you heard a lot there. Get some feedback from you.
Never heard that story about the lost hit in the '53 World Series. So that is fascinating to me. That is, I feel like it's plausible. Yeah, that could have been. I mean, we think about how things were in the '50s, obviously, and so that's I've never heard that before. That I'm gonna have to look that up and go read a little bit about that. That's a good little tidbit to have there. I do want to ask both of you guys, since I have Danny and Billy here on, what do you think your parents, your fathers, would think about playing baseball today? Because it's such a different game than it was in the '50s and the '60s. You know, what do you think their feeling would be about the way Major League Baseball is today?
Um, I'll take that first. I think, Dad was a traditionalist, and I think he would have a hard time with this war thing and all that because he was more of, average RBIs, hits, the whole game. And I think it would have been a hard thing for him to adjust to a lot of the different things that are happening now. I mean, I still have no idea what a lot of these things are. And so, but that's, he would have, maybe it would have helped him. I don't know. But I just think that, to answer your question, I think he would have had I don't know if it had been a problem or not, but I think it would have been, more of a, because that would be like re-entering and relearning the game again. And, I don't think he would have liked that much.
Well,
And
that's a great question from Bryan Hoch. I absolutely love it. But let me ask a question since Bryan went down that road. I watch ESPN Sunday Night Baseball and I cringe because they have the shortstop or the second baseman wired for sound. He's talking to the play-by-play guy. There was a play where he goes diving for a ball and his earpiece fell out. Brian, I think you know, you probably saw that, right? I don't
Boston,
know.
right? Boston. Rafaela on Boston, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you, but before we turn it over to them, how do you, because you're in the business, how do you feel about that? Somebody wired for sound during the game. I don't like it.
Well, I'll tell you what, those players have 10,000 really good reasons to put that microphone in their ear. And so they're getting paid for it. So I understand why they do it. But I think that is it necessary? Do we need it? Do we need to hear what a shortstop is thinking during the inning? Do we need the microphone, the guys coming down and talking to the manager in the fourth inning and saying, hey, guy hit a home run. What'd that look like to you? Do we need it right then at that point? I understand it's entertainment and we're trying to put on a show here, but I think if I'm commissioner for a day, I think I snap my fingers and I make that go away. Maybe you guys think differently.
Hey, Billy Jr., let's take Brian's question and we'll pose it to you. Let's say Billy, the manager, right? ESPN goes, in between innings and all of that, or a microphone on him. Your thoughts on how your dad would have reacted to that?
Well, I know this. Every player's different. And that actually, it's probably good for some players, believe it or not, Brian. Some guys are better if they're gabbing and defensively. Sometimes in the plate, that's a whole different ballgame. And I've seen them do it at the plate too. I watched Freddie Freeman taking at bat with the headset in, and I loved it. I thought it was really interesting, but as a manager, my father would only allow it if it were guys he thought could really handle it. And as soon as something went wrong, that was it. Over. We're never doing that again. You also said something about the game, about today's game, because people say to me all the time, Billy, your father would hate analytics. And I laugh. I go, no, he would love having all that extra information. That said, if all the analytics said do this, he would do the exact opposite on a regular occasion to screw up other people's analytics, just like he would do when he managed. If he played another playoff team that he thought might be a playoff team, when he played them early in the season, he'd be insane running the base pass, double stealing, sending everybody. So that when they got to the postseason, all his guys had to do was act like they're running. And everybody'd start puckering up and making mistakes because of what he did earlier. He would use it to his advantage. Are today's coaches doing that? I think some of the old school guys are.
Interesting. I can't imagine Buster Olney wandering into the dugout and trying to talk to Billy Martin in the middle of a game. I think he would tell him to get the hell out of here. But he would know better than me.
Yeah.
But great question, Brian. And we could even drill down further on it. But I just want to say to all of you, it's just such a pleasure speaking to everybody. And Danny, when I put this together, there was another person that I thought of, and I interviewed him, I think it was a couple of years ago now, and his name is Dr. Paul Semendinger, a baseball historian, and he wrote a terrific book about Roy White with Roy White. And the name of the book is From Compton to the Bronx. And he had some interesting stories in there. And I'm just going to see if we have him through the magic of Zoom. Dr. Paul Semendinger. Paul, are you with us?
I am here. How are you, Mike?
Great. Okay, so you guys say hello. We have Danny Mantle. We have Bryan Hoch. You know who he is, the best beat writer in the business for MLB.com. And we have Billy Martin Jr. So if you would be good enough to tell Danny Mantle, you shared a couple of really poignant stories regarding Roy White, if you would be nice enough to share them with us now.
That would be a great pleasure. And I talk about it throughout the book, but there's an appendix where I talk about four of the greatest players he played with. Your dad, of course, Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson, and Sardahara O, and the things that made each of them great. Now, of course, when Roy White played with Mickey Mantle, Roy White was at the beginning of his career, and Mickey was obviously at the end of his career. But Roy tells the story of watching your dad getting taped up in the locker room and all of the hard work that was done to make sure that your dad was able to play. And he recalls a game in 1968. It might have been part of a doubleheader, but I don't think it was, but it might have been playing against the Detroit Tigers, who would obviously go on to win the World Series. And this was late in the season. The Yankees in 1968 obviously weren't very good. And Mickey Mantle obviously knew that this was probably, if he wasn't certain, he was pretty certain this was going to be his last season. And Roy White remembers watching your dad get taped up and go through all of that in order to get out onto the field in what was essentially a meaningless game. At the very end of his career, at the very tail end of his season, against the best team when the Yankees had no chance to beat them. And I remember as a ground ball, the man on first that was hit to the infield. And when you look at players today, a lot of them would hit that ground ball to the shortstop or the second baseman and go, oh, it's a double play, and they would just run softly to first base. But that's not what Mickey Mantle did. Mickey Mantle hit the ball hard on the ground and saw that it could be a double play, and he ran as hard as he could down the baseline to try to beat it out. Now, again, I don't know if he beat it out or not, but the point of what happened is really irrelevant to the fact that here was a guy at the very tail end of his career who was already one of the greatest superstars in the history of the game, a legend for virtually 2 decades, the 50s and the 60s. And yet, because he was playing in the game, he gave his all to do the very best that he could, even though the game itself and the statistics didn't really matter. And Roy White saw that and he said, my goodness, if Mickey Mantle can play that hard in this type of game, I have to play that hard throughout every one of my games. And that really was something that inspired Roy White to be as great of a player as he was. And Mantle, of course, played in over 140 games, I think, in each of his last couple of years. And Roy White then goes on to be a player who plays in 162 games a season because he really got that sense of what to do from your dad.
Yeah. And I've told Mike this before, back in those years, let's just say 66 through Dad's final year, Roy White was my favorite player during that time. And I don't know if he probably got tired of me staring at him a lot in the clubhouse, but it was he was just that guy for me and those teams, and but I hope he's doing well, and he was such a nice guy to all of us and everything. I just hope he's doing really well.
Yes, he's doing great, and he's 81. He'll be 82, I believe, and I know his birthday's in December. I think he's 81, I believe. I'm almost certain, and he's in great health. He shows up to Yankee events. He was just at Old Timers Day. I try to see him as often as I can, and he is the definition of a gentleman, a good human being, modest, sincere, kind to everybody. And writing the book with him was an absolute pleasure. And when he'd meet people, he was always take the time to listen to them and to give them the time to talk to him, the great Roy White. So yes, and after this, I'm going to reach out to him and let him know that you were his favorite player. I'm sure he knows that, but it's always nice to hear things like that.
Well, please do, because he meant a lot to all of us, and I know Dad really thought a heck of a lot of him too. So it was, it was all mutual, and even though the team wasn't what everyone was used to, I think there was a lot of booing going on Dad's part. That's Yankee fans are tough. And my mom used to say, doesn't that hurt your feelings or anything? He's like, no, because when they're coming out there, they're used to us doing spectacular and all that. He said, I don't blame them at all. And so he would just try that much harder the next game. So, and I'm sure Roy knows exactly what I'm saying. So, but yes, Roy White was a great man.
I'll jump in and say, I saw the tail end of Mickey's career. My most vivid memory was his 500th home run on Mother's Day in 1967. But you guys did paint a picture. Those were lean years, and Roy White and Bobby Mercer were the two guys in the lineup that I would start. Oh, he's coming up this inning, and all of that. And Bryan, I would like to ask you your thoughts on what you've heard, and also, did you ever meet Roy White in Old Timers Day, et cetera? And if you have an opinion, or did you get to meet him?
Yeah. Roy's around quite a bit. He was just at Old Timers Day, and I feel like he looks great. By the way, you forget how old. I mean, um, you have to really check the back of the baseball card, and then you say, "Wow, he looks fantastic." I just saw him at a golf tournament recently. I think he was at the Yogi Berra one. It may have been the David Cohn one, but he was at one of those, and got to talk to him a little bit there. And yeah, I mean, he is. It's a link to Yankee baseball of the past. And you talk to him and you're realizing, I mean, this is a guy who was in the dugout with Mickey. I mean, he was around with Billy. I mean, he has stories and connections about all of it. And really, I think that with the Yankees being such a historic laden franchise, I mean, I would love to see Roy and guys of that era around more. I think they should really take advantage of it more. I was saying earlier this season, and they were kicking the ball around and not really heads up on the base pass. I said, where's Willie Randolph in all of this? Why is Willie Randolph not a part of this coaching staff, or at least brought in? I know he's in spring training with them, but I watch Willie out there every day and drilling with Anthony Volpe and Jazz Chisholm, and really kind of working for his meal money there every day. He takes it seriously. He's not just down there for a vacation. I say, this is the kind of guy who should be around the team more often. And when you see a team that's not following through on the fundamentals, I think that they could really take advantage of that and draw upon that. But clearly they want to keep their guys at this point. So see where it goes. But as far as Roy White goes, great Yankee, an all-time Yankee. And, I think that if you compare him historically, he's I know he's not in Monument Park, but he's got a good case for it. Especially
He's got a great case. It's time.
Look at some of the guys who are out there. He fits in that pantheon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Bryan, you bring up a great point with that. We see, Volpe with 18 errors and Jazz with 14 errors and so on and so on. And I think we're ranked as a team 25th out of 30 teams in most errors. And interestingly enough, teams like the Boston Red Sox that have, we've breathed new life into them somehow. They're ranked, they're 30th. They've committed the most errors. Bryan, you brought up a point about Roy. And Paul, you're the perfect person to ask. Did he go an entire season without making an error in the outfield?
Yes, he did. I think that was 1971, and I think he was. I'm virtually certain. Again, I hate to say 100% on these things without doing the research at that moment, but yes, I'm virtually certain he was the first player in Yankee history ever to spend an entire season without making an error in the outfield.
Billy Jr., I should probably pose this question. Bryan Hoch asked the question before. What would your dads think about the current day? I should probably ask Danny this question, but I'm going to ask it to you. What would your dad have thought about the DH?
I mean, we liked that it was different in both leagues, right? He liked both ends of it. Even though as a player, there were times it was a little frustrating for him because Casey would bat my father in the 8 hole unless Whitey was pitching. his buddy Whitey had a 290 average. And so Whitey got the 8 hole. Dad had to, hit the 9 hole there. And Casey did it for 2 reasons. One, it was, the main reason was it pushed my father's buttons. It jacked with him some. And Casey knew that. And he did that on purpose. It didn't affect him. Casey also took my father from that spot in the World Series and put him behind Mickey. Now think what this would do to an analytics guy today, right? They would lose their mind. You're taking the slap, second baseman and putting him behind Mickey Mantle. What? Except for if you look at my father's slugging percentage in World Series play, it's almost 600. It's pretty damn good. He and Mickey hit back-to-back home runs 3 times. There's only one set of teammates that did it 4 times in the history of the game. So Casey knew what he was doing. And that's where things are so crazy with today's analytics. That's why I like watching the old school managers even more now, because they're going to go out there and still manage the game by their gut. And that's when it gets great.
And Bryan Hoch, we talked before about postseason performance and how it is important for Aaron Judge to step up in the postseason. It's interesting, Bryan, that we're talking to Billy Martin Jr. and Billy Martin. His career World Series, because there was no other playoffs other than World Series, his batting average was .333. Bryan, so here's a player that actually stepped up in the biggest of moments.
Yeah, I think if Aaron Judge could replicate what Billy Martin did in the World Series, he'd sign up for that right now. And so, as we mentioned earlier, it would be. I don't think he has to do it to be considered an all-time great, but I think to change that narrative and to not be standing there in Cooperstown one day saying, we got close, but we never won the big one. I don't think Judge wants that. I don't think any Yankee fan wants that. I mean, this is a team that measures itself by championships. It's been a long time since 2009. I think I know from reading my direct messages and all that, the fans are angry and they're ready. They're ready for another championship, and it's been too long. And Judge is going to have to be the guy who gets them there. And now, look, they're a postseason team. They're going to be in the dance here, whether they win the division or their wild card. I guess that remains to be seen here in this stretch. But they're going to be in it. They're going to have a chance, and let's see what they do with it.
Well, you know what? Before we let you go, Bryan, because we know it's a game night, and we can't thank you enough for the time that you shared with us. About a month ago, Billy and I did an episode where we just threw it out to a lot of Yankee fans, and at the time, boy, oh boy, I mean, it was like the Aaron Boone watch was on. Is he going to get fired if we get swept, et cetera? This was the mood about a month ago. And, I said 2 things. I said, one, I'm not so sure if firing Aaron Boone fixes the problem if you get the drift where the analytics department does really kind of have the final say for the most part. Now, the other thing is, I painted a picture, Bryan, and I want to get your opinion on this before we let you go. I said, in this darkest hour, I'm going to paint a picture. And we talked about Whitey Ford, okay, and him and Mickey Mantle, and then you have players like Billy Martin Jr. Billy Martin, they step up at the right time. What I said is, I just want to paint a picture, and I said, if you close your eyes and you look at an outfield of Bellinger, Grisham, and Judge, and we're keeping our fingers crossed with the elbow, et cetera, like that. But now with the addition of McMahon, and we have at first base, we got Goldschmidt, okay? And here's somebody very, very important. I wrote a column on the S Network about Max Fried. I'm a huge fan of his. Now, you just look at those players that I just mentioned. Defensively, they're all Gold Glove caliber, okay? Now, what you say, well, what's the what's the thing that we have to hope on? Well, you have Volpe and you have a player like Jazz, those are the ones that have to make all the plays defensively. Those are the ones that have to be situational hitting, etc. That you need to count on. But you can close your eyes and say, yeah, I could picture that as a championship team with pitching and defense. And when you think about how important Max Fried was in the column that I wrote, Bryan, I talked about not only the curveball, not only the elite curveball, but I said the reason why he's elite is because he's complete. And when you look at the game last night, he turned 2 bunts into game-changing moments. And David Cohn was right when he said, "Oh, that's a bad play, stupid play, whatever he said on Houston's part." But at the same time, to make one play and get the force play at third, and the other one to turn it into a double play, I mean, that's really amazing. And the last thing before I get your opinion, Bryan, because it's just a great opportunity to have you with us, I also felt that with Max Fried, he had the ability to make other pitchers on the staff better by them emulating his obsession with off speed, with the curveball, with the changeup. Okay. And you saw it last night in full effect. And then you have guys like Rodon that are finally getting it, the light bulbs going off. And then I'm going to leave it with this: Cam Schlittler. I'm excited about him. First of all, I'm excited that I said his name correctly, okay, without getting beeped out. And the other thing is that I noticed his first couple of games, Bryan, he did not throw the curveball, and he wasn't noted for it in the minor leagues. But sure enough, he's making that third pitch. We know fastball and the cutter and all of that. I'm excited, and they've added to the bullpen. So with that, I know the weaknesses. I know all the flaws. I get all of that, but just painted a picture that, at least in my opinion, gives us some hope. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I see it. I see it, and I'll tell you why. Because all the things you just mentioned there, go back to last year in the postseason. What did the Dodgers say? Put the ball in play, and the Yankees will kick it around. And we saw that's what happened in the World Series. And you mentioned there, look, they're not a perfect defensive team. No team really is, but they have enough there that I feel like when you have a pitcher like Fried who puts the ball in play, he's not going to strike out the world. He's going to rely on his defense. And you saw Volpe made a couple of really nice plays behind him last night. I think Jazz did too. I think that if the guys make the plays behind him, he's going to get out. I mean, there's a reason they gave him the money. I know he went on a little summer vacation, let's call it, where he wasn't pitching very well, but he seems to be back now. He seems to have figured that out. I think he was dealing with some blister issues. And let's fast forward to the postseason here. Because it's funny you brought up Rodon. I was just talking to him in Chicago, and we were talking about would the pitcher he was with the White Sox, it was basically just, I'm going to throw a fastball by you, mix in a slider once in a while. I'm going to strike you out, and if you hit it, you hit it. That's fine. That's what he was. He was fastball slider. Now he's a much smarter, more cerebral pitcher, and he's got different ways and weapons of getting you out. And I asked him, do you think the White Sox version of you would even recognize who you are now? And he kind of laughed and he said, that's a good question. He said, no, I don't think so, because I was so just geared up that I'm going to strike out everybody in the game. I'm trying to strike out 27 guys. And now there's a different way to do it. And I think that you have to make that adjustment. And Schlittler's at a different part of his career here where he's got the stuff. He can just go out there and try to strike everybody out. I mean, give me a guy who's throwing 100 miles an hour and is so young that he doesn't really realize what the pressure is going on around him. Give me him starting a postseason game or multiple postseason games. And so if I'm the Yankees, I'm setting up my rotation. I want Fried, I want Rodon, and I want Schlittler, and then see where the chips fall from there. I think that, is it a guarantee? No, because nothing's a guarantee in this sport. But I do think the American League is weak enough still. The teams don't impress me all that much. Toronto, despite the fact that they've beaten up on the Yankees, they don't impress me all that much. Boston, no, not really. And they just got a huge hit there with an injury. So I think it's still there for the Yankees to certainly go back to the World Series, make postseason noise. And we're going to be looking back and saying, man, everybody was killing this team in June and July. And look, they still wound up doing it. And the reason why is 162 is a long year. It's such a long year. You bury a team in June and July, and you just look foolish in October. And so I think that's what we're seeing here.
Bryan, before you go, let's just let Danny have a final word with you. The other gentlemen are going to stay on board with us, but Danny, I know you appreciated Bryan coming on, so just want to give you a last opportunity to say something to Bryan before we move on.
Yeah, other than thanking you very much, Bryan, for taking your time. I know you're really busy, and just being with us means a lot. And but I do have one question. Do you think Judge has the you know what I'm going to ask? You know, can he get close to the Triple Crown this year, do you think? Or I
I
mean,
think he's got well, no, because I think Cal Raleigh is going to blow him out of the water in the home runs.
just with the home runs though, or
I
Well,
don't know.
as
Is
we
he going to?
speak,
he's starting
Yeah.
to inch back up on the average. I mean, I saw that, so
so Judge, in terms of the Triple Crown, okay, and Bryan, next year marks the 70th anniversary of the Triple Crown, the 70th
Wow.
anniversary. So you know what, you could speak to Jason Zillow and say on the 60th anniversary they invited Danny to the stadium and did the bobblehead. So I think they're falling asleep at the switch a little bit. You can get some brownie points, Bryan, over there. Tell Jason Zillow that next year is the 70th anniversary of the Triple Crown. And before
Okay.
Bryan gives his answer, Judge leads in batting average, and like you said, Cal Riley, the big dumper, has got 51 home runs. Judge has got 43. So that's kind of a daunting task. And Judge has 97 RBIs, and Cal has 108. But when it comes to so that's triple crown. But when it comes to MVP, okay, Judge has a 7.4 WAR, Cal 5.7. Bryan, we'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I think that unless Raleigh has some kind of injury, and I know we don't want to see that, he's going to keep hitting home runs, and it's going to take Judge a while to catch up there. And so, if you had asked me that question in April or May or June, yeah, I would have said Triple Crown's within reach. I think he's not going to get there on the home runs part, but certainly, MVP is a great argument because as great as Judge is, we're talking about a catcher. We don't see this from a catcher and who gets beat up behind the plate every single day. And I think you get bonus points for that. I think there's probably going to be some voter fatigue too, seeing Judge now going for a third MVP award, and somebody's going to say, "Oh, let's give it to the catcher from Seattle." Get some new blood in there. It's going to be a good argument all down the stretch, and I think it's too early to make that call. But I think you do give bonus points to a catcher who's back there every single day, working with the pitchers, prioritizing defense, and then hitting 50-plus home runs on top of it. It's a special year.
oh, bro.
And Bryan and Danny, the last Yankee to win his third MVP was Mickey Mantle. Bryan, thank you so much. You're the best. And we look forward to speaking to you again. The other gentlemen are going to hang in there with us, but we know there's a game going on. Thank you so much for your time.
You got it, guys. Thanks.
Okay.
Anytime.
Thank you again.
Bryan.
Okay.
Thank you, buddy.
Right. Billy, before we turn it back to Paul, your thoughts on Aaron Judge as he chases down some of these goals of MVP and a third MVP, and a Triple Crown. Your thoughts?
Well, wait a minute. Who was Mickey Mantle rooming with the year he won the Triple Crown?
Was it Billy Martin? I think it was. I think it was.
Absolutely was.
Yeah.
Got the bad influence, right?
The bad influence guy that they traded, because there's no way Mickey and Whitey are going out to have a drink with Dad being traded.
No
but
way.
anyways, I think Judge is an amazing player. I think there's so much weight on his shoulders. And as tough as Yankee fans are, that's why I worry about his next postseason, because the way they, got on him, who does he really have protecting him? Ted Williams didn't have very good postseason numbers. And look at that team. Babe Ruth had Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig had Babe Ruth. They were very lucky to be on the same team. And if you still watch video of Babe Ruth, especially late in his career, he got pitched around so much. Watch him move around the base paths. I mean, in the batting box. He'll be at the very back and he'll scoot up as the pitcher's starting his windup. I mean, and he had help. Who does Judge have helping him? You know, who did Ted Williams have helping him? I'm not pitching to those guys in the postseason unless somebody steps up big time.
Yeah.
And that's what's tough being a Yankee right there, because you have to have support.
Paul, let's get you to weigh in on that.
Oh, as a Yankee fan, it was a long, cold, lonely summer, to paraphrase George Harrison a little bit there, and change the metaphor. But yeah, it was not fun from the very end of May just until about 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden the Yankees woke up again and they're winning ball games. I think it's pretty well certain they're going to make the postseason. And so the question really now becomes, where are they going to place in that postseason race? The division is still up for grabs as far as the Yankees are concerned. The worry would be if they get into a short series and then they lose a short series and never get a chance to get on a roll. But if the Yankees when the Yankees make the postseason, as you were talking about earlier, you throw out a rotation of Fried, Rodon, and Schlittler, and then you still have Luis Heel, who's really getting better and better and better each time he goes out there. That's
Absolutely.
a tough rotation to beat. And you also noted that the Yankees finally got themselves a third baseman. I don't think Ryan McMahon's going to hit all that much, but he can play third base. And too often the Yankees seem to leave positions unaddressed. And so they spent the first half of the year really not having a third baseman, and they finally got a good one, at least defensively. And you win games. We saw last year the Yankees losing games because of poor defense, and you win games because of good defense. So the prospects for an exciting, tremendous postseason are there, and it's just a matter of what happens.
You bring up a great point. And when they got McMahon, and I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of swing and miss in that in his
Profile.
offense. There's no question about it. But you know what's funny? You ever notice when he feels a ground ball, it's almost like a magnet. His glove is like a magnet. He's not even looking down. He knows the ball's going in his glove. I mean, this guy he's terrific defensively. And the reason why I felt that it was so important is because Max Fried, lefty, he jams a lot of right-handed batters. He gets a lot of weak contact, which sounds like it's good, and it is good, but that creates a lot of slow rollers. You need defensive players that are like Brocious, like guys that make the play. And when you have a third baseman like that, and that's why I mentioned when I kind of created that mosaic of that outfield, I want Bellinger in left, because there's a disproportionate amount of balls when Fried is on the mound and Rodon is on the mound, where they're jamming these lefties. There's a lot of pull side action to third base and left field. You put the best fielders out there, and Paul, just as you said, I feel pretty good about that. And pitching and defense wins championships. I remember Derek Jeter. He was like a broken record. We'll go as far as our pitching takes us. That's what he would say. He had a big ego too, but that's what he would say. We'll go as far as our pitching takes us. And but everybody understands that it's pitching and defense. Billy Martin Jr. 1952, I believe, there was a wind-blown pop-up in the World Series.
I think Jackie Robinson hit that.
And I think it was only Billy Martin that had the gumption to go after it, right? And could you bring us back to that moment in time?
Yeah, he that wasn't his ball. That ball was between really pitcher and Yogi and Moose on the first base side. Dad looked up and saw that they were all kind of hoping one of the other ones got it. And so he just took off and ran in and made that play. And that was obviously a big moment
Well,
for
he had
him,
some
big
speed
moment for the
back,
Yankees.
I think his speed picked up that night, man, because he sure in the hell got there, didn't he?
Here's
Yeah, he did. And he noticed none of those other guys wanted that ball. And it's funny because, and your father was one of the first people to tell me this, Danny, the way, and he told me at one of our dinner meetings, because I asked him about it. I said, why was Dad so good in the postseason? And he said, man, he goes, I don't know, but he goes, I remember one of our World Series, and he goes, I'm sitting in the dugout, and he goes, I was just looking around the ballpark going, wow, look at this place. It's packed. There's not an open seat. This is amazing. We're in the freaking World Series. And he goes, next thing you know, your dad hits a double, spikes the shortstop as he's sliding into second base, jumps up and gets in his face. And I went, wow, Billy's here to play. Let's go. And that was another one of the many stories he told me about kind of what it was like going to the World Series.
Great story, Billy. And Danny, listen to this. I'm going to throw this to Paul. I'm going to get his input. Paul, I was tempted to ask Bryan Hoch, but I didn't want to put him on the spot. I want you to weigh in on this, Paul. When we watched the broadcast, we watched the play-by-play. Billy alluded to the fact that Mickey could make it down to first base like on 3.1 seconds. I think it was like on a drag bunt, but the speed was just off the charts. And the tape measure home runs. There were a couple of times during Yankee broadcasts where Michael Kay would say, well, I was talking to Aaron Boone, and he said, well, if Giancarlo is a freak of nature and he could only hit a ball 450, 470, it's almost impossible to believe that Mickey, who was 5'11", could have hit it as far as he did. And I'm just sitting back and I'm saying to myself, is no one aware that Mickey Mantle hit the facade attached to the roof of Yankee Stadium not once, but twice, and the ball was on its way up? Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah, and he also hit the ball out of Griffith Stadium, I think, left-handed and right-handed, if I'm not mistaken. Some of the longest home runs in history. You know what? I think what happens a lot of times is modern fans, modern sportscasters, modern writers, they don't truly have an appreciation of the history of the game and the greatness of the players that came before them. I'll bring up a different player. A lot of people are talking about these memes and these things go around in Twitter and social media and things like that about the Yankees Mount Rushmore. And everybody seems to be in agreement that Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Mickey Mantle are three of the four guys. And the debate really seems to be about the fourth one. And some people say, Aaron Judge is now going to be the fourth guy on that Mount Rushmore. And I don't see historically how you can displace Joe DiMaggio, who was greater than I think his numbers tell. He missed some years for the war, etc. Of course, he only played 1 year with Mickey Mantle, but his impact on the game was, obviously so much larger than Aaron Judge's. I don't think Les Brown and his orchestra are making songs about Aaron Judge. Ernest Hemingway's not writing about Aaron Judge in his fiction and things like that. And I think what happens is people get so hung up on, well, Aaron Judge can hit the ball so hard or so far, and he has this great exit velocity or whatever, and Giancarlo Stanton, that they forget that these players that came before them, Mantle and all of them, were so much more than the sum totals of their numbers. They were bigger than life. Mickey Mantle was bigger than life, and he represented in a way that no player today represents an entire era. Like when you think about the 50s and the 60s, especially the early 60s, that's an era defined by Mickey Mantle and the great Yankee teams where he was the star. And so I just don't think people understand the historical significance of how great these players were and how much they meant when they just sit there and they look at raw numbers.
Well, Paul, let me ask you a question. As far as something like that, don't you agree, or do you agree that there's something to be said for brute strength rather than, someone pumping iron all day, or, lifting weights just to look great? I really believe, I mean, to this day, I don't know that I've seen forearms the size of Dad's, and these guys are twice his size. So they should think more about it. And look, I get it. These guys are huge today. Look at Judge, he's 6'7" or something, 280. And, those, I mean, you would think those dudes would be hitting them out every night, but I just myself, because I know what kind of workouts and things they did and what Dad did. He was more into keeping his forearms strong because that's where a lot of the, strength comes from. And so, I just, in my mind, there's something more to do with brute strength over made strength.
Agree.
And Danny, that's a great point. And if you recall, Danny, we had someone on a previous episode, you and I, and his name was Donald Ritter, and he idolized Mickey growing up. And Donald is a tough son of a gun. He's a Marine. He was in the Vietnam War, etc. And he idolized your dad. He always, he carried his trading card in his, in his wallet, and also when, wherever he went. But he told a story. You were talking about the forearms, and Paul and Billy, you'll appreciate this. Talking about bunting, okay? He would take the bat, and the knob of the bat, he would put it in the crease of the muscles in his forearm, and it would just sit there, and he would do like a drag bunt, something like that, just to show you the muscularity and the definition of the muscles that he had. There was a crease in his forearm muscles that Donald Ritter saw, and never forgot. Saw him in person, etc. So the combination, gentlemen, I think that's the crux of it. The combination of power and speed is something that was unique. It was a one of one to a degree. And when you talk about one of one, you talk about trading cards. You talk about the value of a Mickey Mantle card, whether it's $12 million for a card, and there's another gentleman that says he's got one in perfect condition that's worth 40 million, and all of that. How is this larger than life persona possible unless there was real, tangible things that made Mickey Mantle unique? Billy, your dad spoke to you about him, and you spoke so eloquently before. But it's the combination of that raw power and blinding speed.
You mentioned earlier, or actually, I think Dr. Paul did, about Roy White talking about how they pregame wrapped him up. My father's quote to me was, they wrapped him up like a damn mummy before every game. He had so many ace bandages on him that he looked like a mummy before he even put his uniform on. And he was in a different class when it comes to speed and power and everything else. I'll never forget a breakfast I had with Ted Williams. And this is late 90s, and kind of cool story. Ted and my father became friends late in Dad's life. They hated each other's guts up until a mutual friend named Bill Reedy, who was in the car accident with my father. And this is a great story. For years, Bill tried to get Dad and Ted together. Kept saying, Ted, you and Billy would have been such good friends if you'd have been on the same team. And Ted would say, I hate that little dago. Screw him. I don't even want to talk to him. And how he finally got him to have an adult beverage with my father was, he said, okay, who was your favorite Yankee? Duh, Mickey Mantle. He said, okay, who was Mickey Mantle's best friend in life? And that's where he got Ted, because Ted went, oh, crap, that was Billy Martin. He said, yep. And he said, all right, set it up. I'll have a beer with him. And they did hit it off. And they, what it really shows you is how real the Yankee Red Sox rivalry is, especially back then. And because Dad used to mess with Ted, he knew if he could get in a fight with Ted and get them both kicked out, he was probably helping his team. But, but we're also talking about a guy, Ted Williams, who, and I'll never forget it, who said to me, he loved that I was an agent and that I knew today's players and what was going on. And he said, I just wish I would have known about the weights. And I looked at him funny. I said, for more power? Because Ted Williams had big time power. And he looked at me and said, oh, hell no. I didn't need more power. So I could stop my swing when I was fooled, because they swung such giant bats back then. People say this all the time. Oh, Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, they wouldn't have put up numbers today like they did back then. They might have put up better numbers today than they did back then, because they'd have swung 32-ounce bats, not 40-plus ounce bats like they did, thinking you had to have bigger wood to hit it farther. And to me, it wouldn't even, it would be a joke what some of those guys would do in today's game.
Yeah.
Danny, the baseball cap that you're wearing, the Comets, could you just explain to our fans and viewers the significance of the cap?
Well, back in, I don't know, January, we'd gotten a call from the AAA team of the Dodgers. They're out of Oklahoma City. And they said, we've been doing this. I guess they were trying to figure out what they were going to rename the team. And they had tons of different names on it. And anyway, it boiled down to the Comets, because they wanted to name it, after the Commerce comic, Dad. And to us, of course, we loved it because, the Dodgers, it sounds kind of weird, but, it's the AAA team of the Dodgers. We've been doing something with the AA team of the Dodgers out of Oklahoma City. Out of Tulsa.
Yep.
For, I think we just did our 16th year of Mickey Mantle Day, where they give away rings and things, but the whole day's for Dad. Anyway, so the whole thing just turned out really nice. And, they named the team the Comets. The town seems to love it. The team seems to love it. So we love it as well. And we're just proud to be part of it.
Beautiful, beautiful. A Commerce Comet. Okay, when you think of that, Paul, right? There's the stories about Mickey where he would run home from school, right? And he would run so fast. They said, "Why?" And I think there was one story where he says, I was afraid it was going to get dark and I wouldn't be able to make my way up. So I had to beat the sunlight to get to the home. That's what made him so.
And in trouble.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap it up. But Paul, just closing thoughts from yourself. I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight, and just closing thoughts on Mickey and just being here with us tonight.
Oh, well, this was great. I'm so glad, Mike, that you invited me, and it's a great pleasure to talk with Billy Jr. and Danny Mantle. and of course yourself. We had that nice interview, I guess, as you said in the beginning. That was a couple of years ago. Time goes too quickly, Mike. And it's just fun talking baseball. And I never had a chance to see Mickey Mantle. His last year was 68, and I was born in 68. And again, you look back and you say, "Oh my goodness, I wish I had had the chance." I got to see Billy Martin as a manager, of course, when I was a little kid, and actually throughout the '80s, on and off, the way that all worked, and those old light beer commercials with "Billy, you're hired," "Billy, you're fired," and things like that. So Billy Martin was part of my fandom as a kid, but I do wish that I'd gotten to see both of those guys play, and it's just an honor to have the chance to sit with both of you guys and reminisce about the careers your fathers had, and to hear your perspectives on the game, and Bryan Hoch as well, and yeah, so this was great. I just want to thank you all for allowing me to be part of it.
Well,
Thank you, Paul.
we thank you for being with us, Paul. And I have one quick question for you, or maybe it's something more. But if I was to get you a Roy White book, can I get it autographed by him, do you think?
I think I could get you a Roy White autographed book.
Because
If maybe Mike could send me your address and we'll get that out to you.
that sounds great because
We'll make that happen. And
he
not
truly
only that's a
means a
beautiful,
lot.
touching thought, Danny, that you're saying that. And let me just, we'll hold up the book again. And it was an excellent book. It's a page turner. And I'm not just saying that because Roy, I don't know about you, Danny, but when I looked at Roy White, the word that came to mind was class. He
That's
carried
I
himself
wanted to say that earlier, and I didn't
right.
get a chance to.
And when you start reading the book and you realize he grew up in Compton, and you realize that these were very mean streets that he
Yeah.
grew up on, and he tells some very, very, illuminating stories where you just I don't want to be no spoiler alert or anything else like that, but you'll be surprised to hear about his upbringing and what he had to overcome. We'll leave it at that. So we'll make sure for sure that you get a signed autograph book. Dr. Paul will make sure of that, and and we're going to do this again, by the way. So with that in mind, we just Billy, thank you for joining us. Any final words before we sign off? We thank you for joining us and adding to the evening.
Well, I love doing this stuff. When it comes to Roy White, class act was the first thing that came to my mind, because that's who he was as a player.
Yeah.
And I wish I'd have known as a kid to ask him stories about the Mick and what it was like back in those days. But, I was 12 years old and just happy that those guys were good to me.
Oh yeah.
But dang, man, I would love to ask him a few questions.
Yeah.
About those crazy years and what it was like, because he was a class act.
Really was. Switch hitter, excellent fielder, just a complete package without question. Danny, this was a labor of love for me to put this together because, I feel so close with you, like a kindred spirits. I grew up idolizing your dad, and anything like this is just completely heartwarming. So once again, guys, we're going to put this episode, we're going to put it on a community channel. Once we do that, then we'll be able to send it in full format to you guys. You'll be able to see it, and we're going to do it again, soon, because it was a blast.